Sarah held the injector in her trembling hands, staring at the 3 different formulations she had prepared. Each vial contained a slightly different concentration of synthetic adrenaline, mixed with human growth hormones and neural stimulants. The theory was sound, but theory and reality didn't always match. Elder Cothran lay perfectly still, his ancient eyes closed in meditation. The bioship around them hummed with nervous energy, as if the living vessel could sense the importance of what was about to happen. "Elder, I'm going to start with the weakest formulation," Sarah said. "If it works, you should feel increased strength and alertness, but nothing overwhelming." "Proceed, Dr. Chen." Sarah pressed the first injector against the soft scales of the dragon's neck, where she could feel the strong pulse of his primary artery. The device hissed softly as it delivered its contents into his bloodstream. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then Elder Cothran's breathing deepened, and his scales began to shimmer with a faint inner light. It was subtle, nothing like the blazing transformation she had witnessed with Zeftar, but it was definitely something. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked. The elder dragon opened his eyes, and Sarah was relieved to see they were still their normal golden color, not the burning red of full awakening. "Interesting, I feel. More alert, stronger, but also calm, in control. This is not what I expected. The stimulants should help maintain mental clarity, while the synthetic adrenaline enhances your physical capabilities. Can you move?" Elder Cothran slowly raised his massive head, then extended one wing experimentally. The movement was smooth and controlled, showing none of the unsteady trembling that had preceded Zeftar's transformation. "This is remarkable," the elder said. "I can feel the flame essence stirring in my blood, but it is not consuming me. It is as if you have found a way to crack open the door to awakening without throwing it wide." Sarah felt a surge of hope. "Do you think you could sustain this level of enhancement for an extended period?" "Perhaps. But Dr. Chen, I do not think. This level of power will be sufficient to destroy the Void Engine. We will need something stronger." Sarah nodded and reached for the second injector. This one contained twice the concentration of active ingredients. "This is the medium-strength formulation. Are you ready?" "Yes. But first I must tell you something. If this procedure succeeds, it will not just affect me. Every dragon in the galaxy will feel the awakening. Your medicine may trigger a cascade effect that awakens our entire species. Is that good or bad?" Elder Cothran's expression was thoughtful. "It depends on whether we can control the power. In the old days, awakened dragons sometimes lost themselves to the flame. They became beings of pure energy and destruction, unable to distinguish between friend and enemy." Sarah felt a chill of fear. "You mean they went insane?" "Not insane exactly. They transcended their mortal forms and became something else in." Sarah held her breath as the Void Hunter voices grew closer. She had seen these creatures before, during the evacuation drills. They stood 8 feet tall on insect-like legs with forearms ending in razor-sharp claws. Their heads were elongated skulls with rows of needle teeth, and their black exoskeletons seemed to absorb light. Everything about them screamed predator. Zeftar's breathing was becoming steadier. The adrenaline was definitely working, but Sarah didn't understand how. The dose she had given him should have been far too small to make this much difference in such a large creature, unless dragon biology was more similar to human biology than anyone had realized. "They're coming," she whispered. The dragon's head turned toward the sound of approaching enemies. His remaining eye had changed color, shifting from the usual golden amber to a deep fierce red. "Sarah, listen to me carefully. When I tell you to run, you run. Do not look back. Do not try to help me. Just run. I told you I'm not leaving you. You must." Zeftar's voice carried a strange authority now, unlike anything she had heard from him before. "What is about to happen? It is not for human eyes to see." Before Sarah could ask what he meant, 3 Void Hunters rounded the corner. They moved with the fluid grace of born killers, their weapons already raised and ready to fire. When they saw the wounded dragon and the human kneeling beside him, they chittered excitedly to each other. "Easy prey." The lead hunter raised its energy rifle, aiming directly at Sarah's head. She closed her eyes and waited for the end. Instead, she heard a sound that made her bones vibrate. It was deep and powerful, like the roar of an ancient engine starting up after centuries of silence. She opened her eyes and gasped. Zeftar was moving. Not the slow, pained movements of a dying creature, but smooth and deliberate motions. He pushed himself up from the floor with surprising grace, his massive form unfolding like a piece of living architecture. The gray color was fading from his scales, replaced by something that seemed to glow from within. The Void Hunters hesitated, clearly not expecting their prey to suddenly stand up and face them. Their weapons wavered uncertainly. "Run, Sarah," Zeftar said quietly, but his voice carried clearly through the corridor. "Run now." This time Sarah didn't argue. Something in the dragon's tone told her that staying would be a very bad idea. She scrambled to her feet and sprinted down the side corridor, her medical kit bouncing against her hip. Behind her, she heard the distinctive whine of Void Hunter energy weapons firing. Multiple shots all at once, then silence, then a sound like nothing she had ever heard before. It started as a roar, but it was more than that. It was the sound of a star being born, of mountains rising from the earth, of oceans boiling away into steam. It was the voice of something ancient and terrible and magnificent all at once. Sarah couldn't help herself. Despite Zeftar's warning, she stopped running and looked back. The corridor was filled with light. Not the harsh red glow of the emergency systems, but something warm and golden that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. At the center of the light stood Zeftar, but he was transformed. His scales now blazed with inner fire, shifting through colors that had no names. His wings, including the one that had been broken, spread wide and cast shadows that moved independently of his body. Most shocking of all, his wounds were gone. The burns from the Void Hunter weapons had simply vanished, leaving unblemished scale behind. The 3 Void Hunters lay scattered around him like broken toys. Their energy weapons had been reduced to smoking slag, and their exoskeletons were cracked and bleeding. They weren't dead, but they weren't moving either. Zeftar turned his head toward Sarah, and she saw that both of his eyes were open now. They burned with the same golden light that surrounded his body. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. "I told you not to look back, small friend." "What? What's happening to you?" Sarah stammered. "Your medicine," Zeftar said, taking a step toward her. Each footfall left glowing prints on the metal floor. "It has awakened something that was meant to sleep until my final hour." "I don't understand." The dragon's expression softened, and for a moment, he looked like the gentle ambassador she had known. "My people have many secrets, Sarah. We are not just what we appear to be. We are guardians, keepers of ancient powers that we use only when all other options are exhausted." "You mean you've been holding back this whole time?" "We had to. This power, it is not meant for casual use. It burns through our life force like fire through paper. When a dragon enters the final awakening, they become something beyond mortal limits. But the cost is everything. We die when the power fades." Sarah felt her heart sink. "You mean using the adrenaline shot triggered the awakening early?" "Yes. Your human medicine forced my body past its normal limits, past the safeguards that keep this power locked away." Zeftar moved closer, and Sarah could feel the heat radiating from his transformed body. "I was dying anyway, Sarah. But now, instead of dying slowly and helplessly, I die as a dragon should. In battle, protecting those who cannot protect themselves." More sounds echoed through the corridor. Heavy footsteps, lots of them. The main Void Hunter force was advancing toward their position. Sarah could hear orders being barked in their harsh language, and the distinctive hum of heavy weapons being powered up. "How many are there?" she asked. Zeftar tilted his head, listening. 200, perhaps more. They bring their war machines as well. Mechs and siege engines. Can you fight that many?" The dragon's burning eyes met hers. In the old days, a single awakened dragon could level a mountain or boil away a sea. But those were different times, and I am not as strong as the ancients were. Still, I will make them pay dearly for what they have done here. What about the other dragons? Can you awaken them too?" Zeftar's expression grew sad. "The others are already dead, Sarah. I felt their lights go out one by one as their bioships fell. I am the last of my kind on this station." The approaching army was getting closer. Sarah could see the glow of their energy weapons reflecting off the corridor walls. In minutes, maybe less, they would be here. "You need to find an escape pod," Zeftar said urgently. "Get to the human fleet. Tell them what you have seen here. Tell them about the awakening. Why? What difference will it make? Because this is not the end, small friend. The Void Hunters think they have won, but they do not understand what they face. There are other dragons in the galaxy, sleeping guardians waiting for the call to awaken, and now that the seal has been broken, Zeftar spread his wings wider and the light around him grew brighter. Sarah had to shield her eyes against the glare. Now the real war begins. Sarah didn't want to leave Zeftar, but she knew he was right. She had to survive to tell others what had happened here. As she turned to run toward the escape pod bays, she heard the dragon speak one last time. Remember, Sarah Chen of Earth. Remember what your people's courage can awaken. She ran through the twisting corridors of the dying station, following emergency signs toward the escape pods. Behind her, the sound of battle erupted. It wasn't like any battle she had ever heard before. The Void Hunter's energy weapons made their usual sharp crackling sounds, but they were answered by something that sounded like thunder mixed with music. The wall shook around her as she ran. Emergency panels sparked and died. In some places, the metal floor had become so hot that she could feel it through her boots. Whatever Zeftar was doing back there, it was tearing the station apart. She reached the escape pod bay to find chaos. Several pods had already launched, their empty berths standing open like missing teeth. Other pods had been damaged in the attack and hung uselessly in their launch tubes. But there, in the far corner, was one that still showed green lights on its status panel. Sarah rushed to the pod and started the launch sequence. As the systems came online, she could see the battle raging outside through the bay's observation windows. The space around the station was filled with Void Hunter ships, their black hulls gleaming in the light from Zeftar's transformation. And what a light it was. The entire station was now glowing like a second sun. Beams of golden energy lanced out from its hull, striking Void Hunter vessels and reducing them to expanding clouds of debris. Some of the larger enemy ships tried to return fire, but their weapons seemed to have no effect on the energy surrounding the station. The escape pod systems finished their startup sequence. Sarah strapped herself in and hit the launch button. The pod shot out of the station like a bullet, accelerating so fast that she was pressed deep into her seat. As her pod flew away from the battle, Sarah watched through the rear viewport in amazement. The station was no longer recognizable as a human structure. It had become something else entirely, a geometric pattern of light and energy that pulsed with its own rhythm. At its center, she could just make out the silhouette of Zeftar, his wings spread wide, his form blazing like a living star. The Void Hunter fleet was in full retreat. Their ships fled in all directions, but the dragon's power reached out to touch them. One by one, the enemy vessels simply stopped existing, consumed by waves of golden fire that left nothing behind. But Sarah could see that Zeftar was paying a price for his power. Even from this distance, she could tell that his light was beginning to flicker. The dragon had told her the truth about the final awakening burning through his life force. He was dying as he fought. Her pod's autopilot engaged, setting course for the nearest human fleet position. Sarah settled back in her seat and tried to process what she had witnessed. The gentle, scholarly dragon who had spent months learning human customs and sharing stories about his people had transformed into something out of legend. 3 hours later, her pod was picked up by the UES Defiance, a human battleship that had been racing toward the station when the attack began. The ship's captain, a stern woman named Rodriguez, listened to Sarah's report with growing amazement. "You're telling me that one dragon destroyed an entire Void Hunter fleet?" Captain Rodriguez asked. "Not destroyed. Drove them off. But yes, essentially." Sarah was in the ship's medical bay, being treated for minor injuries and exhaustion. "Captain, the dragons have been hiding their true capabilities from us. They're not just an advanced species. They're something much more." "And you think this adrenaline shot you gave him triggered this transformation?" Sarah nodded. "Zeftar called it the final awakening. He said it was a power they only used as a last resort because it kills them. But my medicine somehow forced his body past its normal limits." Captain Rodriguez paced back and forth in the small medical bay. "We need to get this information to Fleet Command immediately. If the dragons have this kind of power, it changes everything about our war with the Void Hunters." "There's something else," Sarah said quietly. "Zeftar told me there are other dragons in the galaxy. Sleeping guardians, he called them. And he said that now that the seal has been broken, they might awaken too." Before the captain could respond, the ship's communication officer burst into the medical bay. "Captain, you need to see this. We're receiving transmissions from all over the galaxy." They rushed to the bridge where the main screen was displaying a star map dotted with pulsing lights. Each light represented a communication signal, and there were hundreds of them. "What are we looking at?" Captain Rodriguez demanded. "Dragon bioships, Captain," the communications officer replied, his voice filled with awe. "They're appearing everywhere. Systems that haven't seen dragon activity in centuries are suddenly lighting up with their energy signatures." Sarah stared at the display in wonder. He was right. "They're awakening." The first transmission came through a few minutes later. The image on the screen showed the bridge of a dragon bioship, but this wasn't like any dragon vessel Sarah had seen before. The organic curves were still there, but everything seemed larger, more powerful. And at the center of the bridge stood a dragon unlike any she had met. This dragon was ancient. Sarah could tell just by looking at him. His scales were deep blue-black like the depths of space, and his eyes held the weight of millennia. When he spoke, his voice carried the same harmonics she had heard from Zeftar during his transformation. "I am Elder Kothran of the Deep Realm," the dragon said. "We have felt the awakening of our brother Zeftar across the void. His sacrifice has stirred powers that have slept since the first age of stars." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "Elder Kothran, this is Captain Rodriguez of the United Earth ship Defiance. We witnessed your brother's transformation. Our medical officer was with him when he awakened." The ancient dragon's gaze found Sarah through the screen. "Ah, the small human who gave her medicine to a dying guardian. Your act of compassion has changed the course of galactic history, Sarah Chen of Earth." "I don't understand," Sarah said. "I just used an adrenaline shot. How could that have such a big effect?" Elder Kothran's expression was thoughtful. "Your species has a saying about desperate times calling for desperate measures. The medicine you gave Zeftar was not what awakened him. It was your determination to save him even when hope was lost. Your refusal to abandon a friend even in the face of certain death. That doesn't make sense," Sarah protested, "doesn't it?" The elder dragon's eyes seemed to look right through her. "Tell me, human, what is adrenaline? What does it do to your body?" Sarah thought about it. "It's our body's response to extreme stress or danger. It gives us strength and speed beyond our normal limits. It lets us do things we couldn't normally do." "And why does your body produce this chemical?" "To survive. To fight when we have to fight, to run when we have to run, to protect the people we care about." Elder Kothran nodded slowly. "Yes, it is the physical manifestation of something much deeper. It is your species' absolute refusal to surrender, translated into biology. When you gave that medicine to Zeftar, you gave him more than chemicals. You gave him the essence of human determination. But he's a dragon, not a human. We are all children of the same universe, small friend. The courage that flows in human veins can awaken courage in any heart, if that heart is ready to receive it." The transmission crackled with interference, and Elder Kothran's image flickered. "I must go now. The Void Hunters have sensed our awakening and are massing their forces for a great assault. But before I leave, know this. What begins today will echo through the ages. Your people and mine, fighting side by side, will write a new chapter in the story of the galaxy." The screen went dark, leaving the bridge of the Defiance in stunned silence. 2 weeks after the awakening at Kepler Station, Sarah found herself aboard the UES Prometheus, humanity's newest and largest battleship. The ship was racing toward the Andromeda sector, where intelligence reports indicated the Void Hunters were gathering their greatest fleet in recorded history. The transformation of the war had been swift and dramatic. Dragon bioships that had been dormant for centuries were now active across the galaxy. They moved with purpose, seeking out Void Hunter strongholds and liberating worlds that had been under enemy control for decades. But the Void Hunters weren't retreating. Instead, they seemed to be consolidating their forces for one massive strike. Long-range sensors showed thousands of their vessels converging on a single point in space, including ships larger than anything they had deployed before. Sarah stood in the Prometheus's medical bay, preparing for what everyone knew would be the largest battle in galactic history. As the ship's new chief medical officer, she had been working around the clock to develop new treatments that could help both human and dragon. Physiology, the breakthrough, had come when she analyzed blood samples from the few dragons who had survived minor injuries in recent battles. Their biology was more similar to humans than anyone had realized, particularly in their stress response systems. Dragons had their own version of adrenaline, a chemical they called flame essence that their bodies produced in moments of extreme danger. But there was a difference. Human adrenaline was meant for short bursts of enhanced performance. Dragon flame essence was designed to be sustainable, allowing them to maintain enhanced abilities for extended periods. The problem was that most dragons had lost the ability to produce it naturally. Centuries of peace had caused the biological pathways to become dormant. Sarah's research suggested that synthetic human adrenaline could serve as a catalyst, awakening the dormant flame essence production in dragon physiology. It was a theory that could change everything, but testing it would require finding a dragon willing to risk their life on an untested procedure. "Dr. Chen, we're receiving a priority transmission," announced the ship's communication officer over the intercom. "Captain requests your presence on the bridge." Sarah made her way through the ship's corridors, noting the controlled tension among the crew. Everyone knew they were heading into a battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The Prometheus was part of a combined fleet of human and dragon vessels, the largest alliance force ever assembled. On the bridge, Captain Maria Santos was studying tactical displays with her senior officers. The captain was young for her rank, but she had earned her position through a series of brilliant victories against Void Hunter forces. "Dr. Chen, we've just received intelligence that changes our entire battle plan," Captain Santos said. "The Void Hunters aren't just gathering their fleet. They're building something." The main screen shifted to show long-range sensor data from the Andromeda sector. At the center of the Void Hunter fleet was a structure unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. It was massive, easily the size of a small moon, and it pulsed with dark energy. "What is it?" Sarah asked. "We're not entirely sure," replied Commander Jackson, the ship's tactical officer. "But according to our dragon allies, it's something called a void engine, a weapon capable of consuming entire star systems." Sarah felt her blood run cold. "How long until it's operational?" 18 hours, maybe less, Captain Santos said grimly. "Which means we have to attack now before they can finish it." "But Captain," Commander Jackson protested, "our fleet isn't at full strength yet. We're still waiting for reinforcements from the core worlds. There's no time to wait. If that weapon becomes operational, it won't matter how many ships we have." The captain turned to Sarah. "Doctor, I need to ask you about your research. The dragons tell us that only an awakened guardian can destroy something like the void engine, but awakening kills them." Sarah nodded. "The final awakening burns through their entire life force in a matter of hours. But I've been working on something that might change that." She explained her theory about using synthetic adrenaline to trigger controlled flame essence production. "If I'm right, we might be able to give dragons the power of the awakened without the fatal cost. But it's untested and the risks are enormous." "What kind of risks?" "The worst-case scenario is that it kills them instantly. Best case, it gives them enhanced abilities without permanent damage. But there's a whole range of possibilities in between." Before Captain Santos could respond, another transmission came through. This time it was from Elder Kothron, whose ancient bioship was leading the dragon contingent of their fleet. "Captain Santos, we must speak urgently," the Elder Dragon said. "Our long-range sensors have detected something troubling about the Void Engine." "What have you found, Elder?" "It is not just a weapon. It is a summoning device. The Void Hunters are attempting to call something from the deep dark between galaxies, something that should never be allowed to enter our reality." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Sarah had heard whispers about the entities that lived in the void between galaxies, ancient things that existed in the spaces where no stars shone. If the Void Hunters were trying to summon one of those beings, how do we stop it? Captain Santos asked. "Only the full power of an awakened guardian can disrupt a summoning of this magnitude," Elder Kothron replied. "But as you know, such awakening means death for the guardian who undergoes it." Sarah stepped forward. "Elder Kothron, I've been working on a way to safely trigger awakening. Would you be willing to let me test it?" The ancient dragon's image flickered with what might have been surprise. "You believe you can grant the power of awakening without the cost?" "I can't guarantee it will work. But if we don't try, we're going to lose dragons anyway when they undergo the final awakening to stop that weapon." Elder Kothron was quiet for a long moment. "Your species continues to surprise us, Dr. Chen. Very well. I will submit to your procedure. But we must act quickly. My scouts report that the Void Engine will be ready to fire within 12 hours. The transmission ended and Captain Santos immediately began issuing orders. Navigation. Set course for the Elder's bioship. Maximum burn. Dr. Chen, you have 6 hours to prepare your procedure. As the Prometheus changed course to rendezvous with Elder Kothron's vessel, Sarah returned to her medical bay to gather her equipment. She had developed several different formulations of synthetic adrenaline, each designed to trigger different levels of response in dragon physiology. The weakest formulation should provide enhanced strength and speed without any risk. The strongest might trigger full awakening, but it could also kill instantly, and somewhere in between was the theoretical sweet spot that would give a dragon awakened-level power without the fatal cost. The problem was that she had no way to test the formulation safely. Dragon biology was still largely mysterious to human science, and computer models could only predict so much. In the end, she would be relying on intuition and hope. 6 hours later, Sarah found herself aboard Elder Cothron's bioship, standing in a chamber that seemed to be grown rather than built. The walls pulsed with organic rhythms and the air itself felt alive. The Elder Dragon lay before her, his massive form filling most of the available space. "I am ready, Dr. Chen," he said quietly. "But before we begin, you should know something. I am not just any dragon. I am the last of the original guardians, the ones who first learned to awaken our inner fire. If your procedure fails and I die, much knowledge will be lost forever." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She looked at the array of injectors in her hands, each one containing a different formulation. The fate of the galaxy might depend on which one she chose. "Elder, I need you to understand the risks. This is completely experimental. I can't predict what will happen." The ancient dragon's eyes met hers. "Dr. Chen, your people have a saying about fortune favoring the bold. Today we will test whether the universe favors courage over caution." Sarah held the injector in her trembling hands, staring at the 3 different formulations she had prepared. Each vial contained a slightly different concentration of synthetic adrenaline, mixed with human growth hormones and neural stimulants. The theory was sound, but theory and reality didn't always match. Elder Cothron lay perfectly still, his ancient eyes closed in meditation. The bioship around them hummed with nervous energy, as if the living vessel could sense the importance of what was about to happen. "Elder, I'm going to start with the weakest formulation," Sarah said. "If it works, you should feel increased strength and alertness, but nothing overwhelming. Proceed, Dr. Chen." Sarah pressed the first injector against the soft scales of the dragon's neck, where she could feel the strong pulse of his primary artery. The device hissed softly as it delivered its contents into his bloodstream. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then Elder Cothron's breathing deepened and his scales began to shimmer with a faint inner light. It was subtle. Nothing like the blazing transformation she had witnessed with Zeftar, but it was definitely something. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked. The Elder Dragon opened his eyes, and Sarah was relieved to see they were still their normal golden color, not the burning red of full awakening. "Interesting. I feel more alert, stronger, but also calm and control. This is not what I expected. The stimulants should help maintain mental clarity while the synthetic adrenaline enhances your physical capabilities. Can you move?" Elder Cothron slowly raised his massive head, then extended one wing experimentally. The movement was smooth and controlled, showing none of the unsteady trembling that had preceded Zeftar's transformation. "This is remarkable," the Elder said. "I can feel the flame essence stirring in my blood, but it is not consuming me. It is as if you have found a way to crack open the door to awakening without throwing it wide." Sarah felt a surge of hope. "Do you think you could sustain this level of enhancement for an extended period?" "Perhaps, but Dr. Chen, I do not think this level of power will be sufficient to destroy the Void Engine. We will need something stronger." Sarah nodded and reached for the second injector. This one contained twice the concentration of active ingredients. "This is the medium-strength formulation. Are you ready?" "Yes, but first I must tell you something. If this procedure succeeds, it will not just affect me. Every dragon in the galaxy will feel the awakening. Your medicine may trigger a cascade effect that awakens our entire species." "Is that good or bad?" Elder Cothron's expression was thoughtful. "It depends on whether we can control the power. In the old days, awakened dragons sometimes—" Sarah held the final injector with shaking hands as Elder Cothron's bioship raced toward the Void Engine. The massive weapon was now fully active, tearing larger and larger holes in the fabric of space. Through those tears, she could see glimpses of something that made her mind recoil in horror. The entity trying to enter their reality was nothing like any life form she could imagine. It was a writhing mass of darkness and hunger, larger than planets, older than stars. Even seeing fragments of it through the dimensional tears filled Sarah with a primal terror that seemed to bypass her rational mind entirely. "The Void Engine will finish its summoning in 3 minutes," Elder Cothran said, his voice now completely transformed by harmonic overtones. "Dr. Chen, I need you to understand what will happen when you give me that final injection." "You'll die," Sarah said quietly. "Yes, probably. But more than that, I will become something beyond death, beyond life as we understand it. For a brief time, I will be a force of pure creation, the opposite of the destructive hunger that the Void Hunters are summoning." Sarah watched her medical monitors as Elder Cothran's vital signs continued to spike. The controlled awakening was already pushing his biology to its limits. What if the injection kills you before you can stop the summoning? Then you must find another way. But Dr. Chen, there is something else you should know. Your synthetic adrenaline has done more than just trigger awakening in me. It has created a resonance, a connection between human and dragon physiology that has never existed before. What do you mean? Elder Cothran's bioship shuddered as Void Hunter energy weapons struck its defensive barriers. They were getting close now, close enough to see the individual components of the Void Engine. It was a nightmarish fusion of technology and dark magic, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. I mean that when I achieve full awakening, you will feel it too. Every human who has been exposed to dragon flame essence, every human who has worked closely with our kind, will experience a moment of transcendence. Your species' determination and courage will be amplified beyond anything you have ever known. Sarah felt a chill of fear mixed with excitement. You're talking about awakening the entire human race? Not awakening exactly. Humans do not have flame essence. But you have something else, something equally powerful. You have the ability to refuse defeat even when defeat is certain. When I awaken, that ability will be magnified across your entire species. The bioship was now within range of the Void Engine's defensive weapons. Massive energy beams lanced out at them, and even Elder Cothran's enhanced barriers began to buckle under the assault. Sarah could feel the ship shaking as the Elder Dragon poured more power into their defenses. "Elder, I'm reading massive energy buildup in the Void Engine. It's preparing to fire its main weapon. Then we are out of time. Dr. Chen, I need you to administer the final injection now." Sarah looked at the Elder Dragon, this ancient being who had lived for millennia, and was now willing to sacrifice himself to save the galaxy. "Cothran, it's been an honor working with you. The honor has been mine, small friend. Your people have taught us that size and strength are not what make a species great. It is the willingness to stand against the darkness no matter the cost." Sarah pressed the injector against Elder Cothran's neck and triggered it. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Light exploded from the Elder Dragon's body, not the controlled golden glow of his previous awakening, but something infinitely brighter and more intense. The bioship itself began to transform, its organic hull becoming translucent as energy poured through every surface. Elder Cothran's form began to change. His physical body stretched and elongated, becoming more energy than matter. His wings spread wide and became sheets of pure flame that extended far beyond the confines of the ship. When he spoke, his voice was like the sound of a star being born. "Sarah Chen of Earth, thank you for showing us the way." And then Sarah felt it, a surge of energy that seemed to come from everywhere at once, flowing through her body and mind like liquid lightning. For a moment, she could feel every human in the galaxy, their thoughts and emotions connecting in a vast network of consciousness. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Captain Santos staggered as the wave of energy hit her. Around the galaxy, human soldiers who had been fighting losing battles against the Void Hunters suddenly found themselves filled with impossible strength and determination. Human engineers who had been struggling with damaged equipment felt their minds expand, seeing solutions that had been invisible moments before. It wasn't just physical enhancement. It was as if every human alive had suddenly remembered who they really were, what they were capable of when they refused to surrender. But the transformation of Elder Cothran was far from complete. The ancient dragon was now barely recognizable as a physical being. He had become a living constellation, a pattern of stars and flame that moved with purpose and intelligence. "Now," he said, his voice echoing across space itself, "let us end this." Elder Cothran's transformed form moved toward the Void Engine with impossible speed. The weapon's defensive systems fired everything they had at him. but the beams of dark energy simply passed through his transcendent form without effect. He was no longer made of matter that could be destroyed by conventional weapons. The void engine itself began to pulse frantically, as if sensing the approach of something that could actually threaten it. The dimensional tiers it had been creating started to close as the weapon redirected all its power toward defense. But it was too late. Elder Cothron reached out with wings of pure flame and embraced the void engine. Where his energy touched the dark weapon, corruption began to burn away like fog before the sunrise. The battle that followed existed on levels that human senses could barely perceive. The transcendent dragon and the summoned entity fought across multiple dimensions simultaneously, their conflict tearing holes in space and time itself. Sarah, still aboard the disintegrating bioship, could only watch in awe and terror as forces beyond comprehension clashed around her. Through her enhanced connection to Elder Cothron, she could feel the terrible strain the battle was placing on his transcendent form. He's burning himself out, she realized. Even in this state, he can't maintain this level of power indefinitely. The entity from the void had partially manifested now, a writhing mass of darkness that dwarfed even Elder Cothron's transformed state. It lashed out with tendrils of pure entropy, trying to drain the dragon's energy and corrupt his flame. For a moment, it seemed like the entity might succeed. Elder Cothron's light began to flicker, and Sarah felt the network of human consciousness that he had awakened starting to fade. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of fading, the network began to strengthen. Across the galaxy, humans who had felt Elder Cothron's awakening were now pouring their own determination and courage back into the connection. They might not have flame essence like the dragons, but they had something equally powerful: the absolute refusal to give up. Sarah felt the flow of human will reaching Elder Cothron through the connection he had created. Millions of humans, all lending their strength to the transcendent dragon, all refusing to let him face the darkness alone. "You are not fighting this battle by yourself," Sarah said aloud, knowing somehow that Elder Cothron could hear her. "We're all here with you." The ancient dragon's flame blazed brighter than ever before, but now it carried something new. Mixed with the golden fire of dragon awakening was the silver light of human determination, the two energies intertwining and amplifying each other. The entity from the void recoiled as this combined force struck it. This was something it had never encountered before, a fusion of dragon transcendence and human stubbornness that refused to be consumed or corrupted. Elder Cothron pressed his advantage, pouring everything he had into one final assault. The void engine cracked and began to collapse in on itself, its dark energy turning back on the entity it had been summoning. But Sarah could feel that this victory was coming at the ultimate cost. Elder Cothron was burning away, his transcendent form dissolving as he channeled the last of his existence into destroying the weapon. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for everything." The explosion when the void engine collapsed was unlike anything in recorded history. It wasn't just the destruction of a massive weapon, but the violent rejection of the entity from the void back to its own dimension. Space itself seemed to sigh with relief as the tiers in reality snapped shut, sealing away the ancient hunger that had tried to enter their galaxy. Elder Cothron's transcendent form dissolved in that final moment, his energy scattered across the stars like the seeds of new hope. But his sacrifice had accomplished something that would echo through the ages. The connection he had forged between human and dragon consciousness remained, weaker now but still present. Sarah found herself floating in an escape pod, automatically ejected from the bioship as it disintegrated. Around her, the combined human-dragon fleet was cleaning up the remaining Void Hunter forces. But these enemies seemed different now, less aggressive and more confused. Without the dark influence of the entity they had been serving, many Void Hunter crews were simply surrendering. "Dr. Chen, this is Captain Santos. Are you injured?" The captain's voice came through the pod's communication system. "I'm alive," Sarah replied, though she felt emotionally drained. "Elder Cothron is gone, but he succeeded. The void engine is destroyed. We saw the explosion. The entire fleet felt something when it happened. It was like..." Captain Santos paused, searching for words, like suddenly remembering who we're supposed to be. Sarah understood what the captain meant. The enhancement that Elder Cothron's awakening had triggered was fading from human consciousness, but it had left something behind. A deeper understanding of their own potential, a clearer sense of what they could accomplish when they worked together. The rescue ship that picked up Sarah's pod was a Dragon biovessel, but not one she recognized. As she was brought aboard, she was surprised to meet a young dragon who introduced herself as Zara Lin. "Dr. Chen, I am honored to meet you," the dragon said. "Your work with Elder Cothran has changed everything for my people." "How so?" "The awakening he achieved. The controlled enhancement you made possible, it has awakened something in all of us. Not the burning transcendence that destroys, but a gentle flame that sustains and protects. Dragons across the galaxy are reporting new abilities, enhanced strength and wisdom that doesn't come at the cost of our lives." Sarah was amazed. "You mean the synthetic adrenaline is still affecting your species?" "More than that. It has awakened genetic pathways that have been dormant for millennia. We are becoming what our ancestors were meant to be, beings of both power and wisdom, capable of protecting without destroying." Over the following weeks, as the galaxy began to recover from the war, the full extent of the changes became clear. The Void Hunters, without their dark masters to guide them, were revealing themselves to be enslaved beings from dozens of different species. Many were eager to return to their homeworlds and rebuild their shattered civilizations. The dragons had indeed been transformed by Elder Cothran's sacrifice. They retained enhanced abilities without the fatal cost, becoming guardians in the truest sense. They worked alongside human engineers to rebuild damaged worlds, their bioships serving as mobile hospitals and construction platforms. But the most significant change was in humanity itself. The brief moment of enhanced consciousness that Elder Cothran had triggered had left permanent effects. Humans were more intuitive, more cooperative, better able to work together toward common goals. Scientific breakthroughs that should have taken decades were happening in months. Sarah found herself at the center of these developments, working as a liaison between human and dragon medical teams. Her research into synthetic adrenaline had evolved into a new field of interspecies biochemistry that was revolutionizing medicine across the galaxy. 6 months after the battle at the Void Engine, Sarah stood on the observation deck of New Kepler Station, a research facility built to replace the one destroyed in the first Dragon Awakening. Through the transparent metal windows, she could see both human ships and dragon biovessels working together to construct a massive deep space observatory. Impressive, isn't it? Sarah turned to see a familiar figure approaching. It was Zeftar, the dragon who had first awakened at the original Kepler station. She had thought he was dead, consumed by his transformation. "Zeftar, how are you alive?" The dragon's scales shimmered with a gentle inner light as he moved to stand beside her at the window. When Elder Cothran achieved transcendence, his energy touched every dragon who had ever awakened. Those of us who had burned out our life force in final awakening found ourselves restored, but changed. Changed how? We retain the memories and wisdom gained from transcendence, but we are once again mortal beings. We have been given a second chance to use what we learned for the good of all species. Sarah felt tears of joy running down her face. "I'm so glad you survived. I've thought about you every day since that first awakening. And I have thought of you, small friend. Your courage in giving me that first injection of synthetic adrenaline set in motion events that saved not just our galaxy, but countless others. The entity that the Void Hunters summoned was not unique. There are others in the void between galaxies, and now we know how to stand against them." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the mixed crews of humans and dragons working on their joint project. The observatory they were building would allow them to monitor the spaces between galaxies, watching for signs of other entities that might try to enter their reality. "Sarah," Zeftar said eventually, "there is something I must tell you. The connection that Elder Cothran forged between our species, it was not temporary. Every human who felt that awakening, every dragon who was touched by the transcendence, we are all part of something larger now." "What do you mean?" "We are becoming a true alliance, not just politically but biologically. Human children born since the awakening show enhanced intuition and empathy. Dragon hatchlings display unprecedented cooperation and creativity. Our species are evolving together, becoming something new." Sarah considered this revelation. "Is that good or bad?" "It is what it needs to be," Zeftar replied. "The universe is vast and full of wonders, but also full of dangers. To explore it safely, to protect the smaller species who cannot protect themselves, we need to be more than what we were individually. And you think this evolution will help us do that?" "I know it will, because it is built on the foundation of what made it possible in the first place. the human refusal to abandon a friend in need, and the dragon willingness to sacrifice everything for the greater good. As if to emphasize his point, a message came through the station's communication system. It was from a deep space exploration vessel that had just made contact with a new species in a distant spiral arm. The aliens were under attack by a different kind of enemy, one that fed on fear rather than life force. "Well," Sarah said, reaching for her medical kit, "it sounds like they need our help." Zeftar's expression brightened and she could see eagerness in his eyes. "Indeed they do. Shall we show them what humans and dragons can accomplish when they work together? Let's go save the galaxy again," Sarah replied with a grin. As their ship departed for the distant reaches of space, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that desperate moment when she had used her final adrenaline shot on a dying dragon. She had been trying to save one life, never imagining that her act of compassion would awaken powers that would reshape the galaxy. But perhaps that was the most human thing of all, doing what was right without worrying about the consequences, and discovering that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could change everything. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of allies. And as long as there were beings willing to fight for each other, willing to risk everything to protect the innocent, there would always be hope. Behind them, the stars shone with a light that seemed warmer than before, as if the galaxy itself had been awakened to new possibilities. And in the space between those stars, new friendships were being forged, new alliances were being built, and new stories of courage were beginning to be written. The age of the awakened had begun, and it would be glorious.